Good evening. Welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for coming. I am most appreciative. You honor the school by your presence, and pleased to welcome all of you. I know you have many competing priorities. I know that I'm competing with Donald Trump in the Republican presidential primaries, so I'll try to get you there quickly. First, I want to introduce some distinguished guests who have graced us with their presence tonight. First, the chair of the Board of Regents of the Nevada System of Higher Education, Rick Trachuk. The chancellor of the Nevada System of Higher Education, Dan Klage. The president of the University of Nevada, Reno, Mark Johnson. The Chief Medical and Academic Officer of Renown Health, Dr. Max Kopus. And there may be a couple others who slip in a moment. I also want to thank, as we begin, Ryan Jers, Justin Gomez, Audrey Goodnight, Heather DeMonte, and Tessa Newman for all of their arrangements, the presentations, the AV, everything that makes this event go well. So help me thank them as well. I also want to thank others in the audience who represent other healthcare institutions, hospitals, community physician groups who are here, the many partners that support UNSOM and make us successful. Our partnerships, as I will talk about in a moment, are critical to our success. They always have been. They are even more so now. And all of you who represent various institutions and who support us your presence is most appreciated. Our success is entirely linked to those partnerships, and working with you and benefiting from your presence is critical. I'm going to start where I started last year. 5 words that describe what we're doing: improving Nevada's health and healthcare. The state of the school is strong, very strong, getting stronger every day. And the reason for that assessment is partly the accomplishments, some of which I'm going to highlight tonight, accomplishments for which you take credit, accomplishments that are due to your efforts, but partly due to dramatic changes in a statewide vision for medical education, statewide support for medical education, an investment that the state is making that most consider to be historic. These 5 words are more important than they ever have been. So what I'm going to do tonight is review a bit of the highlights, the accomplishments, the many things that you have done to make this school great. I want to talk about the implications of the legislative support, the governor's support, the Board of Regents' support that has brought us to this historic moment for public medical education. Talk specifically about the implications for the University of Nevada School of Medicine. And then talk about where we're headed from here, a bit about the strategic planning process that is going to take us into new directions, the values that will guide us, and the 3 concepts that I introduced last year that I think guide our decision-making: accountability, transparency, and partnership. You have on your tables a fabulous compilation of highlights from the past year, accomplishments from the past year, notable events, awards, and recognitions. I thank Susan Hill and her group for doing a fabulous job in bringing this together. If you're not proud of being connected to the University of Nevada School of Medicine after you read this, then I don't know what's wrong with you. This is an amazing compilation of great work that has occurred over the past year. Let me give you just a few of the highlights that you will see as you look through this. We received regential approval for a major partnership with Renown Health, as well as a major partnership with Mountain View Hospital last year. We have partnered with Aurora Diagnostics, a national anatomic pathology institution, to grow and expand our Department of Pathology, to expand our teaching faculty, and to create a huge and successful clinical platform for our Department of Pathology, as well as to start a biorepository service that will support our basic science research faculty. The Department of Internal Medicine at UMC and in Las Vegas is growing their medical subspecialty fellowships. The Department of Family Medicine in Las Vegas has launched its rural family medicine residency at Winnemucca with residents who were in Las Vegas for a year and now have started at Winnemucca for 2 years, fully based in a rural hospital. The Department of Pediatrics in Las Vegas has taken over the LEAD Clinic, which is a huge safety net clinic for underserved pediatric patients in Las Vegas, and has made that their major home for both primary care and specialty care. The federal government and the March of Dimes have supported a major project in the Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology for group prenatal care. We have new pharmacy services at the 1701 building in Las Vegas. We had a very successful 2 sessions of Project Medical Education in which we bring together community leaders and business leaders and medical professionals to learn about the medical school, to experience a day in the life of medical students. We have partnered with Renown Health in supporting the launch of the Physician Assistant Program, a huge need in this state and in this community. We've received several new grants from the state, from the Attorney General's office, to support women's health care with new projects to deliver indigent health, to deliver women's health care to Opportunity Village residents, as well as new approaches to delivering preventive women's services in family medicine. We use those funds to also buy a super resolution microscope, which can look at living tissues at the DNA level, one of only 10, as I understand it, in the country. We rededicated the proteomics lab with major new investments in equipment and renovations of the facilities, courtesy of Mick Hitchcock, and renamed the proteomics lab for Dr. Hitchcock. We received new grants to support research in obesity, type 2 diabetes, preterm labor, smooth muscle function, GI disease, a particularly exciting partnership with Takeda Innovation Center with Dr. Sanders and the Smooth Muscle GI research group. We had several major research discoveries in the area of Ebola testing, male infertility, and some speech pathology research. Dr. Baran, our Associate Dean of GME, was awarded the Parker Palmer Award for Courage in Teaching, one of the most prominent awards in the graduate medical education field in the country. Our continuing medical education activities under Melissa O'Brien were reaccredited with commendation. Our UNSOM website, the complete relaunch of our web platform, received awards for its design and for its function over the past year. We had Healthcare Heroes, awarded just a couple years ago to Dr. DeAlba, Dr. Berkeley, Dr. Brogan, and Andrea Gregg from our Area Health Education Center. Dr. Jim Kenyon was selected as a foundation professor, one of the highest achievements at the University of Nevada, Reno. Mike Maskley was also awarded or recognized as the Distinguished Classified Employee for the University of Nevada, Reno. Dr. Melissa Piasecki was recognized as a Woman of Achievement by the Nevada Women's Fund. We have a new Department of Neurology in collaboration with Renown Health, led now by Dr. Ivan Lopez. We were blessed to reach into our pool of leadership talent and to have several new faculty members step up and take leadership positions as department chairs. Dr. Allison Netsky in psychiatry, Marcus Erling in pathology, Ivan Lopez, as I mentioned, in neurology, David O'Coin in microbiology and immunology, John Files in surgery, Jeff Harper in biochemistry, and Kathy Goring in internal medicine. We have new leadership roles for Dr. Lisa Palmer, who is now the head of the Southern Practice Plan and the Associate Dean for Clinical Affairs in Las Vegas, and a new leadership role for Dr. Piasecki as the Executive Associate Dean. That is just a sample of the many great things. Many of you in the audience, I think we should applaud all of you for these many accomplishments. Not all was happy, and we suffered tragedies this past year. The loss of Dr. Greg Perry, the loss of Dr. William Zamboni, chairs of microbiology and immunology and surgery, respectively. I will just comment both personally and professionally what an extraordinary loss this is to the school, to me personally, their skills, the departments that they ran so well, their contributions to the leadership team of the school. It is a huge loss to the school, and I want to make sure that we always remember them and keep them in our thoughts. The year was extraordinarily intense, and it's only going to get more so. So however fast you think we're moving, just buckle your belt and hang on, because it's going to get more so. The legislature and the governor have done an extraordinary thing, and the Board of Regents have come together to support this statewide vision. I want to comment a bit on what I think this means. One thing it means is that for the first time in 5 years, this is my 5th State of the School address, I'm saying nothing about history and will never again. History is done. We've lived it, we've experienced it, we've discussed it, we've dissected it. It has a long legacy. It is now all about the future. For the first time in these 5 years, my presentation for the State of the School address is exactly identical in Reno and Las Vegas. And the reason for that is that we now have a unified vision for who we are and where we are and what we're about and what we're supposed to be doing and how we're supposed to serve the state. And we do not have the schism and the separation that has caused difficulties in the past. What I want to talk about tonight is a positive vision for the University of Nevada School of Medicine. This is not about what we are not. This is the old medical school. And apparently, if you look real closely above the door, you can see that it says medicine. It's now the Mackey building. This is part of history. There are lots of things that are part of history. There are certainly transitions that are going to take place for this school. But what we do from here on out is not about what we are not about what we are losing, not about relocations and shifts south to north and otherwise. It's part of a much larger vision. We have to think of this as a full statewide vision for public medical education. It's not an issue of UNSOM versus UNLV. It is UNSOM and UNLV and the rest of the higher education system coming together to serve the state. This is not a zero-sum issue. What the state has done is to invest in a statewide set of resources, and we have to develop those resources and manage those resources and maintain those resources and do right by this incredible support that has been provided. This is an NSHE system of public medical education. This is not just 2 medical schools. This is a statewide system. Somewhat ironically, it actually is the system that Jim Rogers, the former chancellor, had in mind when he launched the concept of a statewide health sciences system. So I want to emphasize over and over again, and will continue to do so, statewide faculty resources, statewide teaching collaborations, statewide research collaborations, schools of medicine that come together to serve this vision. There are huge consequences for us in this transition. There are fundamental vision and fundamental values and a fundamental mission that comes from building out in one community, coming together around a full medical school in Reno with some selective statewide views. We're not defined simply as the only public medical school in Nevada anymore. What does that mean? That has been our basic definition. Were the only public medical school. Now we are not. We have to understand what we will be, what we will become, how we will define ourselves, what we will do that's special, what kinds of special resources will we bring to bear. How does that all come together for the benefit of the state? There are enormous benefits to students, to residents, to our community partners, to community hospitals, to research and teaching collaborations. A host of things will be different because of this. We cannot miss this opportunity. Academic medicine and medical education are team sports, and proximity matters, and having critical masses of resources and faculty members, basic sciences, clinical sciences, students, residents, hospital partners, all in one place has enormous value. There's no question that it is a great challenge to UNLV to build a new medical school. It is an equally great challenge to build this new medical school in Reno, and we have to take it, I think, in that light. We also have selective commitments in Las Vegas, as I mentioned, And again, it's not about what we're, quote, losing in Las Vegas. It's about new selective strategies for how we will build additional resources in Southern Nevada. Our partnership with Mountain View Hospital is incredibly important to everyone, to the state, to Southern Nevada. Building a whole new set of residency programs has enormous value to everyone. What we'll do with students is basically trade out third-year clerkships. Those resources will contribute to UNLV. In return, we have to build out more fourth-year teaching resources and to have as many opportunities for students who wish to do so to seek exposure to residencies in Las Vegas, to take advantage of the incredible teaching that we've always had as a medical school with a clinical campus in Las Vegas. So there's huge value to everyone in how we think about this, how we go about doing this. Now, at this point, it's typical that we ask the question, what do we want to be? And I would suggest that's not quite the right question. The question is, what do we need to be? And I was influenced a little bit by David Brooks' book that came out recently, The Road to Character. And he talks in that book about how me-centric the world has become, and commencement addresses that exhort students to find their passion, to do what's important for them, and to do what's right for them. And I get that, but there's a bigger issue here, which is what do we need to be to serve the state, to serve our students, to serve our patients, to serve even the region beyond Nevada? How do we best serve Nevada, I think is a better question. We can start to answer that a little bit with the strategic planning process in which many of you have participated. You received a survey. I hope most of you filled it out. This is the beginning of what will be a very powerful process. It will lead to some extent into the LCME accreditation process. But separate from that, this is going to be the beginning of how we understand what we need to be and how we will serve. We sent the survey to over 2,500 members of the UNSOM community, nearly everyone you could imagine who has connections to UNSOM in some fashion. Fabulous response rate, over 500 respondents. That's a huge response. The early look at this from Carolyn Braco, who's the graduate student in psychology who's working with Dr. Piasecki to take this enormous data set and do great things with it, is fascinating. I'm going to show you some of the early results. So you're going to see 4 wordles. These are word maps. And what Carolyn has done is to take the responses and start to look at weightings and how many times certain words were mentioned. And we did this according to 4 missions, as you will remember: diversity, clinical care and service, teaching, and research. And I want to show you some of these preliminary results because I think they're fascinating. Just take this in. This is the first one with regard to diversity and culture. And look at the words culture and compassion and respect and outreach and how they pop up. And then you see medical students and residents and community outreach and staff kind of come in around that. I'll just let you puzzle on that for a moment before I show you the next one. So here's the one for clinical care and service. And again, you see quality and clinical quality and excellence and best, safety, rural, outreach, research, patient care, opportunities, patients. It's fascinating to kind of see how the collective response sort of comes together to depict what people think we are or think we should be. Here's the one for teaching. Not surprisingly, medical students, quite prominent. Residents, clinical physicians, community, quality. But you see some other things popping up in here as well. You do see clinical research, and you see training, and you see opportunities, and you see curriculum, and you see primary care is fairly prominent. So again, dominant themes and then some secondary themes that pop up here and there. And finally, research. clinical research, funding, opportunities, medical students. I love to see medical students connected to research, something that I have great passion for and would love to see in terms of a research-intensive school that could provide a scholarly experience for every single medical student. You see translational research. You see UNR that pops up here. And that tells me that people understand the connection between the medical school and the rest of the university in terms of research collaborations. Obviously, much more to make of all of this as we dig into this and look at some of the other patterns. But I think it's fascinating to see how you've all responded to the questions we ask about mission. Carolyn also pulled out some quotations. I'll just give you a few, just to give you a sense from some of the open-ended comments. Recruiting and retaining researchers and physician scientists who will have national and global impact was mentioned as an objective. Growth with emphasis on quality, not quantity, quality of students and residents. I think this also ties into an institutional culture of respect, compassion, and diversity. Produce some of the best doctors in the country with compassion and humility. Excellence as it relates to quality and safety are crucial to the success of our students. I think there's a great opportunity to be more innovative in our approach to excellent clinical care. So again, just touching the surface of a huge data set that will begin to drive what we do. The question will be, how can you contribute? And I want you to think about that because you're going to have many opportunities. You're going to hear in the next weeks to months of opportunities to get involved in various work groups, subcommittees, task forces, ways to begin to take these data and develop a very clear strategic plan. So this will give us a direction, give us some guidance, kind of lay out a bit of a journey. How are we going to get there? This is where we come back to the issue of values and the characteristics of successful organizations and some just plain common sense. So here's some values I want you to think about. Commitment to excellence and quality, commitment to service, commitment to each other. I want you to think about that one in particular. Think about service-based leadership. What do I mean by that? That everyone who has a leadership position, and nearly everyone has a leadership position of some sort, of some responsibility. How are you serving others? How do you make others more successful? It's like the comments that are made quite often about the best basketball players who are great themselves, but they make everybody else on the court better. And that's what I'd like to think is one of our values. The value of integrity and the value of trust. And I keep coming back to, as you have heard in previous presentations, the importance of trust. And that we trust each other and we trust our decision-making and trust the directions that we're taking. If you look in the literature, there are characteristics of successful organizations, and lots of books, whole shelves of books about leadership and characteristics of organizations. They all boil down to a relatively few kind of concepts. One is to have a very well-defined structure, a very clear way that the organization goes about making decisions. The reason for that is to be able to achieve goals, but to share those goals, to communicate goals, to have bi-directional flow up, down, and sideways so that everybody understands where the organization is going. Everyone has contributed to where the organization is going. There's a commitment to teamwork and to working together for the achievement of these goals. There's an understanding of risk and a willingness to take risks, and an understanding of how to manage risk. There's a willingness to adapt, a willingness to look at opportunities, a willingness to change, and there's a bias towards optimism. I think this is as good as it gets in terms of having the opportunity to be more optimistic about our future. Will there be disruptive change? Absolutely. Will that affect some people adversely? Probably. But as an organization and as an institution that has very high-level obligations, I think adapting to those changes, taking those risks, and having some optimistic view of where that's taking us is critical. There's some other basic principles that come along when you read about organizations and how they're successful. One has to do with this issue of how the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. That there has to be a balance between individual career needs and institutional objectives. There's the whole issue of doing the right thing versus doing things right, and sort of a balance between how we know what the right thing to do is, but we also know how to get there in the right way. There's a bias towards moving forward. I've already said that there's a willingness to take risks. Along with the willingness to take risks is the willingness to fail. And I think we have been, for good reason, risk averse in the past because the consequences were so severe and the resources were meager, and we were functioning at a pretty basic level, keeping our basic commitments to our students, to our patients, to our residents, to our beneficiaries, but not really able to look up and think about how much greater we could be. And that's going to require us to be willing to take risks and willing to fail. And I hope you're excited. Again, I understand that these changes can be dislocating, can be traumatic. But in general, I'd like to think that we can move forward with some excitement and some positive energy. Let me come back to the three principles I talked about at the beginning: accountability, transparency, and partnership. These are what I think I follow. I hope that you follow when you're making decisions. These three principles, I think, are what primarily guide us. And for me, at least, I consider it somewhat of my report card, if you will. How have I done with regard to these three areas? With accountability, I think you can point to lots of programs. We're developing new guidelines for clinician educator faculty appointments, for clinician educator physicians for their promotion. That will have some significant accountability related to those criteria, and accountability on the part of department chairs to work with their clinician educator faculty members in their career development. Those of you who were here an hour ago saw some fabulous presentations from the faculty mentoring program. There was a clear accountability of the institution to the career development of these faculty members, and the mentors to serve as mentors to these faculty members, and accountability by the physicians, or the faculty members who were selected to do the work that was expected of them, and they were fabulous projects, and they turned out extremely well. The professional development program is similar in terms of institutional commitments, but an expectation of productivity and expectation that goals will be met, and faculty members who really dug in and did the work for which they were receiving support. We're looking at physician compensation systems that will be much more based on productivity. I think that's critical. Obviously, a high level of accountability there. And look at the LCME. So we're about to enter our accreditation cycle in the coming 2 years. There are huge issues of accountability that we have to the LCME requirements. Sufficiency of faculty members, adequate resources for clinical instruction, information resources and instructional facilities, student support space, elective opportunities, teaching skill development for residents and our community physician instructors, faculty appointment systems and support systems for career development, supervision of our students, some really significant expectations of the school in how we deliver the product that we do in medical students in medical education. The second area is transparency. I would say that this is the most difficult of the three. I believe that transparency is fundamentally good, but it's fundamentally difficult. There's a sense that what transparency means is that everyone gets to know everything all at the same time. And it just doesn't work like that. There are so many sensitivities and legal issues and privacy issues and regulatory issues that personally I find it somewhat difficult to manage some of that. But I think we're making some progress. We have shared a lot of the responses and the data we gathered from the Faculty Forward surveys that we did 2 years ago, and some of the programs that resulted from those responses. We are distributing for the first time graduation questionnaire results from our graduating medical students, which have some really pretty profound guidance and help for us, some things that we do extraordinarily well, some things that we do not do well, that we have to do better, and we're going to share those more widely. We have a mission management tool that comes from the AAMC that has a dashboard that gives quite a bit of information about the school, where we place compared to other schools Again, some things that are very laudable, some things that are not. We're going to share those more widely. The LCME accreditation cycle is going to require some significant sharing of data and results, and we're going to have a website in a fairly short time. It's going to start to populate with information that will be available to everyone, so you know what everyone else knows and what everyone sees. The strategic planning process that I've already talked to you about just launched a website that will become more widely publicized and more widely available soon, that will begin to show you more detail from the data that I showed just briefly a bit ago. Other areas of transparency, I think, of which I'm actually quite proud, has to do with many of these interim chair searches that we've been through. We have had to go through some pretty significant search processes, digging into the faculty to seek out leaders with aspirations to serve the institution. And I think the process that we used, in which there were extensive interviews, both internal and external, of those candidates, were extremely valuable. They gave the candidates a sense of where the department was going. It helps me to give them a charge as to the areas of greatest emphasis. I think it gives the constituents, the faculty members and staff in those departments, a sense that they're invested in the success of the chairs. So I think that's a very positive event. An area where I think it's still more difficult is the issue of budget transparency and how we share reasonably sensitive information about state funds and other sources of support and how those decisions are made. I would say that the last year has been incredibly hectic with regard to the legislative session and some very complex financial reporting, financial data, and budget preparation that I think has gotten in the way of some of this, but we will continue to get better. The biggest area where I want to talk about transparency has to do with our transition in Las Vegas. And that, obviously, is an area of huge interest and huge importance to the school. We had the town hall meetings in June. That was the start of a process. I think it got us off to a reasonable start in terms of talking fairly openly about what will be required as the schools go through this process. I will say personally that I'm still somewhere in the middle of the stages of grief related to this process. I spent 4 years working as hard as I could to make the Las Vegas campus successful as part of UNSOM. And now I'm going to work equally hard to make the Las Vegas campus successful as part of UNLV. And that wrenching shift takes a little bit of getting used to, more so for the people in Las Vegas who are involved. But I think it behooves all of us to understand what that means. There are some areas that I want to highlight tonight in terms of some, again, transparent decisions that are out there. We have made the decision to move the clinician ceremony from Las Vegas to Reno next summer. It would absolutely have moved in 17, but we're going to move it in 16. Most of the reason has to do with curricular changes. We're going to change significantly the transition course in the last block for the second-year students that will include some of the elements of the clinician ceremony, some of the orientation sessions that go on, and we think that this is the time to make that move. We're going to start working very hard on developing the teaching resources in Las Vegas that will shift from third-year teaching to fourth-year teaching and make that shift, we believe, roughly July of 17. Perhaps not abruptly, perhaps not completely, but we have to have a date to which to point toward which we will work that says we are going to build out full capacity in Reno, and we will have reasonable likelihood for students to complete their full third and fourth years in Reno. But with the shift I talked about in terms of third-year teaching now becoming more fourth-year electives so that students, if they choose, will have that opportunity. We're going to do the same thing for moving the residency programs at UMC. Dr. Atkinson and I think, are very enthused about Dr. Baran as a single DIO, designated institutional official, who's responsible for all of GME at UNSOM and will be responsible for shifting the accreditation to UNLV. And again, depending on lots of moving parts, possibly by July of 2017. We have huge work to do with the practice plan. This is definitely a work in progress. Dr. Atkinson has a consultation from PricewaterhouseCoopers that should deliver their results in the next few weeks. That will make some recommendations for how the practice plan could be structured, what needs to happen between now and the transition in 17, how that transition then is completed in the move to UNLV. Lots of work to do in that regard. And I want to highlight something that doesn't get much attention. We have a very successful clinical and translational research enterprise in Las Vegas, with some components here as well, but with some significant success with some of our physician scientists in Las Vegas, thanks in great part to Phil and Jennifer Satre, who are with us tonight, who have supported much of this, and will now begin to support that expansion in Reno as well. But again, it's not an either-or issue. We have great infrastructure, and we can simply expand upon that and grow upon that and develop continued infrastructure in Reno so that we can begin to take advantage of all the hospital partnerships that we've created here and can begin to develop that clinical and translational research base. So again, another example, I think, of it's not either-or, it's not zero-sum. It is both and it grows the enterprise for the entire state. The last area is partnership. Obviously, a tremendous amount to talk about here. Let me just hit some of the highlights. I want to be absolutely clear about our commitment to UMC. We are unequivocally committed to UMC's success, to continuing to grow the teaching resources there, continuing to grow the residency programs there, continuing to invest in success there. This is good for the state, irrespective of who the eventual accreditation sponsor is. We're continuing to serve all the clinical contracts. I just cannot emphasize enough how important it is to not get divisive about this issue and to not start to play one school against another. UMC has been a great home, a great place for students to train for decades. It's not going to change. Our commitment's not going to change. This is Mountain View Hospital. Our partnership there as the academic support for their accredited residency programs continues to thrive. They will grow, they will recruit program directors, they will recruit faculty members, they will launch programs as soon as next summer, and then a sequence of programs for years after that. That is good for everybody. It's good for Las Vegas, it's good for Nevada, it's good for the entire region. On top of that, though, there are student teaching opportunities, and we're going to take advantage of this partnership to develop some very novel, very innovative teaching programs at Mountain View, possibly for third-year students. There may be an opportunity to do something special there for third-year clerkships as a small cohort of the class that could be very exciting. It's hard to talk about all of the ventures, all of the initiatives, all of the collaborations with Renown. The best way to describe this is our mission-critical partner to create a full academic medical center and to be the full school and the full academic program that we need to be in Reno. There are 20 major initiatives on the list right now in various stages of development. If you think about how fast this has moved, it was a year ago, less than a year ago, that this agreement, this affiliation agreement, this comprehensive agreement came to fruition and then came to the regions for approval. And in that short time, we have launched so many positive programs in so many new directions to create a clinical platform upon which outstanding teaching and outstanding research can be layered. The opportunities for co-branding, the opportunities for ways that Renown Health and UNSOM come together to be the academic medical center that we all want is just extraordinary. And it's the route by which we both engage the community. So coming together allows us to engage the community physicians, other community partners, patient groups, schools, other social programs that will improve the health of the entire community. The clinical integration we're going through, for example, in peds and internal medicine is a very small piece of this, but it's very representative because what it does is to get Renown to do what it really does well, which is to manage health systems and networks of practices, and gets us to do what we do well, which is to provide care and teach and conduct research. It's a perfect partnership for our physician faculty members who will remain physician faculty members while Renown manages our clinical enterprise. St. Mary's, another critical partner. The possibility of a new family medicine residency program continues to be discussed. Aurora Diagnostics is the partner I talked about with pathology. This has enormous value. This could be a model for partnerships in other medical schools in the country. The way that a very high quality pathology network comes together with an academic pathology department and meets both clinical and teaching and research obligations in a very innovative way is incredibly exciting. We have partnerships with Northern Nevada Medical Center, partnerships with Community Health Alliance, many other partners in Reno. This is our office for community faculty. How does it look? April Heiselt is our new director of this fabulous facility. She's very excited that it's going to be finished in a fairly short time. This is based in Renown. This is the centerpiece for our relationship with community physicians. This is how we are going to recruit and support and train and develop and reward the community physicians who are going to become the teachers of our medical students. And we're going to do this right, and we're going to do it comprehensively. This becomes the vector for our connection to the community, which is so phenomenally important. And it's particularly important because of curriculum changes that are coming. The third and fourth year curriculum change is going to be launched fairly soon. There are going to be some fairly major changes, and that's going to happen exactly at the same time that we begin to develop these new resources in Reno. So it's perfect timing. Other partnerships in Elko and Winnemucca, rural outreach is going to become way more important. We have always had that legacy, I would say, but I think it's fair to say that in the last 8, 10, 12 years, a lot of the north-south issues have distracted us from being the partners with rural facilities that we should be. I think we can now get back and do that. I was very pleased at the Regents meeting last week that Regent Melcher from Elko asked for a very detailed report of the many rural partnerships that we have or are intending to explore, and we have a lot to talk about, one of which is Project ECHO, which is growing, thriving, and again, has received investment from the state so as to expand and to become the outreach to rural physicians and nurse practitioners and physician assistants that we want to be. All of this comes together into a fundamental branding exercise. Not branding in the kind of superficial marketing sense, but branding in the fundamental sense of who are we, how do we portray ourselves to the outside world, what do we need to be, and how do we explain what we need to be, and how do we explain what we're going to do to serve the state. We have an RFP out that will close soon to secure the services of a major company that specializes in this area. It'll be a year-long exercise. I think that it's the perfect timing to finally capture a sense of what we are, who we are, what we do, how we portray ourselves, and that will lead to, I think, the potential for name change, the potential for logos and marketing communications and other ways that people will finally understand what it means to have a medical school here. So, let's wrap up. I think we have a window of opportunity here, the first in a long time. To take maximal advantage of that opportunity is absolutely critical. It would be an absolute shame if we do not take advantage of what the state has given us in terms of the support to become the school that we need to be. We have to have an absolutely crystal clear understanding of who we are, our vision, our values, our mission, how we serve, how we build relationships, how we build trust, including with UNLV, which will continue to be critical. As I said, we are not defined anymore by just being the only school in the state. We have to understand better the answers to the questions that I've posed. So here's your last Wordle for the for the night. This is the overall Wordle. So if you take all of the responses globally and weight them according to what all of you and all of your colleagues think we are or think we should be, look at what we see. Look what's prominent here. Medical students, clinical research, quality, training, community, residents, faculty, physicians, better health care, excellence, safety, all the great stuff that we aspire to become and that will define us for the future. We need to take this opportunity. We need to have a positive, proactive, optimistic, forward-looking, confident approach to the 5 words, improving Nevada's health and healthcare. I look forward to taking the next steps in that mission with all of you. Thank you. I'd be pleased to take questions. Or I'd be pleased to have a cookie. Let's chat outside. Thank you all.